Well, hello, welcome back to the Shifting Schools podcast. My name is Tricia Friedman, and on this week, we have Nicki Hambleton. Now, Nicki Hambleton is here to talk to us about the power of visual note-taking, of, again, taking our thinking, which might be messy, and as she says, untangling it. Now, Nicki's going to walk us through an example of how she did that with a few of our Shifting Schools prompts about our attitudes in regards to AI. That free download is over there in the show notes, as are links to learn more about Nicki, because as you listen to our conversation, you might be thinking that her skill set is a skill set that really is necessary today. We talk about why, and the thing that really sits with me is that it helps us be better listeners. So before we welcome Nicki to the show, again, please head over to the show notes so you can learn more about NIH consultancy and all the ways that she works with schools and organizations. Before we dig into the conversation, we've got a quick word from our show sponsor.
Shifting Schools is excited to be sponsored by newlight.io. Their platform is designed to simplify MTSS frameworks for personalized student support. Built by leading experts, New Light focuses on getting educators the answers they need fast. Which students need which levels of support? With simple data collection and insightful analytics powered by AI, New Light's platform provides actionable solutions to support your students effectively. Try it for free at newlight.io. That's NEULIGHT.io. Check the link in the show notes to learn more.
Okay, folks, with that, please welcome to the show Nicki Hambleton, who helps us all see the big picture and structure our ideas for clarity, communication, and better collaboration. Nicki, it's such a joy to be chatting with you. I love following your work. I have been very privileged to have experienced it in person, but I want to start actually just going back a few weeks in time where you generated some visual note interpretations that were responding to some of our Shifting Schools prompts about what it means to explore our attitude towards AI. And that's something that I think is so important right now because we've got a wide range of attitudes and thoughts. But I think going about it visually really can pull out some of the thinking process that maybe needs to be more at the surface. So can you take listeners through your process? How did you logistically go about that? And then maybe like cognitively too, what does it mean to do that kind of work?
Yeah, thanks, Tricia. It was really interesting when you ran that idea past me because I've never done really anything on AI or even thought about the prompts that you asked. So I think the first one, I'm just trying to remember one of the questions like, how comfortable are you with reading a book written by AI? And it just made me really think myself. So not only was I thinking about how will I visualize this, I was actually thinking, gosh, how do I feel about that? And so I suppose the first thing with any visual note or sketch note is who's this for? Who's the audience? And because yours was going to be for a silent sketch it out situation in a conference, I knew I couldn't do my fancy ultra finished, highly polished, multiple colored, drawn ones. So I had to just rethink and step back a bit. What would somebody coming to this station, what would they want to see? Would they look at something and go, I can't do that, so I'm not going to do it. So I literally almost got my pen and paper out, or pencil and paper, but I can't leave my iPod alone. So I used sketching pencil as the tool and thought, I'm not going to erase, I'm not going to move things about, I'm just going to do it as if it's pen and paper. So that was really where I first started thinking about it. And then obviously I had to think, how can I answer this first? What would my answer be? And then how can I represent that? So it was actually quite a difficult prompt. Like, how comfortable are you? Did you want somebody smiling? What did you envisage as the design? So I had to just go with my gut feeling and think, what's the key message, or what's the core idea behind it? And then what visual might represent that? So I just had a little bit of fun, actually, and thought, okay, let's set up the blank page. So I had this little image on the side and some little sort of thought bubbles. And then the one for how comfortable are you with reading a book written by AI? Actually, I don't think I'd be that bothered if it was fiction. So I drew a little bookshelf, just really quick and simple. It looks actually dodgy when I look at it now, but just really simple. And then a ultra simple little figure on one side and another figure questioning, what about non-fiction? What would that be like? And so that was it really I think that was the first or second one I did. And so I thought, I'm quite intrigued about this. So I wonder what other prompts she's got. The next one that I saw was, how comfortable are you with using an AI-generated photo on your CV? Spoiler, I might have actually tried out some of these images just to see what they're like, and some of them are dreadful. So that was a really fun one to do. Again, just really simple little symbols of, if it's like a little figure and then a paintbrush and then a sort of a t-shirt, just keep it really simple. So hopefully people looking at those examples would be able to say, I can draw that. Yeah, I can draw a little simple icon, and then not adding too much to it so that people could just grab a piece of paper and have a go themselves.
And I wonder if we can tap into two things that you've said there. One, I know it sounds simplistic maybe, but it's so important you had fun. This is a piece that I feel like we're talking about wellness and education all the time, but I never see us go to what are we doing that's intentionally fun? That's a question to be answered. You talked about how it does not necessarily need to be a work of art. It doesn't have to be overly complicated. And for me, I feel like that's really critical, because I know some people will be turned off by the idea of visual note taking if they feel like they don't have that skill set. And if you don't engage with it, I think you're robbing yourself of the experience of thinking with friction being present by design. And I love that you picked up on all of these questions being about our comfort, because you've got to sit with that. And I think we really benefit from, as you did and as you articulated, I'm dissecting the question and I'm really thinking it through. And then I'm thinking through, how do I communicate that? I think with the attitudes towards AI piece, if we can slow down our reaction a little bit, we might also become a little bit more aware of certain biases we have. Think about the difference of growing up with the media, the big dominant narrative about AI being something like Terminator, versus today, if I'm a child, I've grown up with the wild robot. And I do think those things are going to nudge our thinking towards this technology. So could you say a little bit more about just Nicki, you are artistically extremely talented and you've put a lot of work into it. But could you maybe just say a little bit more about, even when it's not a work that is going to go into a frame, just what some of the benefit of thinking slower as a visual note taker, what maybe you've noticed about, hey, sometimes like very fast is not what we want when it comes to thinking. Slow might be more beneficial.
Yeah, I guess it depends on the situation. If you're sitting live in a meeting or at a conference, it's actually really quite hard to take notes, because in most people's cases, if they're typing on a computer, they'll just take down it word for word as fast as they can type. And I think when people do that, they're not really extracting what the main points are. And when you do what I do, I still have my trusty little notebook as well as the iPad. But when I do that, particularly by hand, a lot of people say the drawing is the hardest bit, but I always say, I apologize if I repeat this, but I always say it's the thinking that's the hardest bit. So you have to sit quietly and really listen carefully to what's being said and what the key points are because those are the things that you put down, because it takes you longer to write by hand. It takes you longer to draw or to think what that image might be. So that thinking part of it is often the hardest bit. But just going back to slowing down, drawing has always been like a meditation for me. I could sit there with a pencil and paper wherever, and before I know it, I'm lost in it. I think they sometimes call it creative flow, but I'm lost in that, and time has just gone past. I always used to laugh that I'd be drawing away and I'd look up and it's gone dark outside. But I think it is like meditation, because all you've got is your hand and your pen or your pencil. And it's just a lovely feeling just to draw. And if I go back to what I said before about who is this for, you said it perfectly. It's not going to go into a frame. It's not going to go on a billboard. It's not going to go in the Louvre. So who is it for? If it's just for yourself, then why not do it? There's always going to be the people that are leaning over your shoulder going, oh, that's interesting. What are you doing? And if you're like me, a little bit self-conscious of somebody saying something like that, then you just have to get comfortable with that uncomfortableness, that if it's something you're going to look back on and potentially remember so much more and better because of the way that you took the notes, because you were so invested in it and so caught up in it, then that's a great thing. And it doesn't really matter if it doesn't look like an artistic piece of work. It's not meant to be.
I really like that you mentioned the mindset or the feeling that it gives you, because I think, again, we underestimate that at our peril. Like, learning should feel, in a way, regenerative or restorative. But I also realize what you're talking about doing is deeply processing the information or what you're listening to in a way that you have to transform it. There's a creativity and a critical thinking to that, but also you have to listen. And I think so often about how, specifically in K-12, I know we talk a lot about the production side, the speaking side of things, but I don't know that we've done enough on the listening piece. I know that you've been working as a visual note taker for a very long time, and I wonder if you think it's a fair characterization to say that you're a better listener because of it.
Yeah, I think I'm quite a good listener anyway. Just in my nature, I prefer to listen and ask questions than perhaps being in the spotlight like I am now. But yeah, I think it must do, because if you're going to try to capture what somebody's saying and you want to give them or gift them the sketch note afterwards, then you really want to listen for what you think are the main points. I remember a conference, quite some time ago. And I think I said to the person afterwards, oh, you were such a dream to do a visual note for, because the first thing you said was, I'm going to give you 3 points. And so immediately I knew, right, divide the page into 3, or divide the design into 3 sections. So it is about listening, but it's also hopefully capturing what's being said in an interesting view. And I think there's also that danger as well, that how I interpret what's being shared or said might be different than what the person is considering. Although I didn't say that very well.
No, you did, because I really think that this idea of having that as a reflective piece that's also like an archive, like this is, as a former lit teacher, this was a great thing to do with students who would sometimes feel that hesitation to share what they thought of something, where we'd have some kind of common text, like a TED Talk comes to mind. We would do a visual note that it didn't have to be bigger than a Post-it note. And then the post side of let's reveal what we took away, you would always have a wide spectrum of this was the thing I felt like I had to capture. And I just think that's such a powerful experience to also be hyper aware of. We're all taking different things away from a given text. And the visual note is what I think makes that obvious. Because I think sometimes if you just do it by conversation, the thing that happens is, oh, that person is saying this was the important part. So I'll latch on to that.
Yes. Yeah, very true, actually. Very true. And I think when you can capture a conversation with multiple voices as well, there's nothing better than the people that are sitting in the room to be able to see what's being said, or at least be reminded of what's being said. Again, I remember quite a long time ago, another conference, they wheeled in a whiteboard and said, "Oh, come on, Nicki, you're a good note taker. You've got nice handwriting. Well, take some notes on the meeting." And so I think for the very first time, I took notes in a mind map, concept map kind of style. And everybody, I guess they shared afterwards that it was really interesting to see the conversation at the same time as hearing it. But when people had moved on to, I don't know, another point or something, they were also then still reminded of how it connected back to a different point, because the map that was evolving shared that. And that was really good fun to do at the time, because I could, again, just like you were saying earlier, I could just listen, hear what people were saying, try to work out where it would go on the mind map, and then if it's connected back to something else that was said. Yeah, that it's a very versatile thing, visual notes. I think people think when they hear about it, they think it's got to be these amazing visual facilitations. These are people who are paid a lot of money as a graphic facilitator, who are incredible at listening, and the way they map it out is stunning. But it doesn't have to be like that. It can literally be you're taking notes with a few little images to remind yourself of something in your notebook. It could be that you're working with a class trying to map a concept that's just not sticking with students, and you just want to block it and chunk it and see where things connect. But there's so many different ways that you can use it. It really is not just for artists or people that can draw. That's usually the first thing that I tell people, that anyone can do it.
And there's telling people that, and then there's people believing that. And I'm sold on it, Nicki. Like, visual note taking is something that I've loved doing with students, young and old. And it is, I feel like I have seen, yes, people, once they've got a little scaffolding, they can really do some remarkable work with it. And I feel, the artistry aside, the quality of thinking and conversation that comes from it is incredible.
Hi, folks. We'll get back to our conversation in just a moment. I want to talk a bit more about newlight.io, the AI FERPA compliant, that's our federal guidelines around privacy of student data, platform making personalized student support a breeze. You know, student privacy is huge in our schools, and New Light is big on privacy as well. It was one of the first questions I asked the co-founder, Jose, about. There are a few AI systems out there that meet the requirements to being FERPA compliant, and New Light does just that. New Light's IntelliTier platform is more than just a data collection tool. It's an AI-powered assistant that has been trained to truly understand the MTSS framework, student context, and school-specific resources. Developed by a team with both social, emotional, and behavioral needs in mind, and with plans to extend into academic support soon. Studies show effective MTSS and SEL implementations can boost attendance, improve grades, and increase graduation rates. Yet many schools struggle with the complexities of gathering data and turning that data into actionable items within the MTSS process. New Light's IntelliTier platform makes it easy with simple, fast data collection, asynchronous collaboration across the MTSS team, and actionable insight that educators can implement and document their success with. Plus, New Light is advised by seasoned educators and administrators, so they understand your everyday classroom challenges. You have to try it out for yourself. So head over to newlight.io to give it a try for free. That's NEULIGHT.io. Thank you to New Light for taking this on, and a proud sponsor of the Shifting Schools community.
Now, I know that we will have a few listeners who are saying, okay, Maybe, but I don't have faith that I can start to learn. Can you walk us through how, that person who's feeling that hesitation could maybe just make an initial start of it?
I have this lovely little game that I play. So whether I'm with a group, taking a workshop or working one-to-one, I learned the name of this little game from two previous colleagues, and they called it Crazy 8. And so I've adopted it as a fun little way of starting to draw. And essentially, you have little Post-its, and I might give you 20 seconds. So draw a light bulb. And most people would be like, oh my goodness, there's a little filament. No, I'll just show them on the board first. I wish I could just draw it for you now, but I'll just do it with my hand. But I just do a little curve, a couple of lines at the bottom, a little stick in the middle, and a few dots around the outside. And that's it. 10 seconds, you got a light bulb. And I think once people see that it can be, just follow me, do a drawing, you can do this. Have a go of it. An open book, that'll probably take you 10 seconds with 5-6 lines. And I think if you start with a little fun game like that, then people can see just how easy it can be. If you were to say to me, I need you to draw the Eiffel Tower, then I might struggle a little bit, or something really complex. But if you're just starting out and you want to build up a little icon library of things that you might find useful, then that's one of the best ways to begin. There's a fantastic resource online called the Noun Project, and you can see lots of little icons there. So that's really good for giving you some ideas about a simple way to represent a face or a building or an object or something. Yeah, it's not as difficult as people think.
Yeah, the icon library, again, just understanding, there's 10 to 12 icons that you become confident with. There's a lot you can communicate. I feel like the analogy that maybe applies here is with cooking. If you learn a few great, easy strategies or 2 or 3 really good flavor pairings, that's going to set you up to become a better cook. It's not knowing the whole culinary, you don't need to memorize a cookbook kind of a thing. I really appreciate you bringing up the Noun Project and just seeing more examples. Nicki, you've got a great portfolio of work. And I think also that part of just immersing yourself in what others have done can be really informative and inspirational. Would you maybe just point us to some of your work that you think, here's an example, not only of strategically how, but strategically when? Because I think there's a lot of great different use cases for doing this. And I wonder if 1 or 2 come to mind and you're saying, hey, you can learn about this in this space.
I don't know, Tricia.
Or even just take us to your LinkedIn, right? Because you're sharing a lot there. Is there a LinkedIn post that comes to mind where it's, just take a look at this?
Yeah, I was initially going to say on Flickr, I have an album called Visual Note Taking. So it's quite interesting that the work that I'm doing now, and then I scroll all the way down and see some of the early little sketch notes, which is quite nice to see that evolution. Because a lot of what I'm doing now are perhaps not the note-taking in the notebook kind of style. They're sort of the big picture, like a visual metaphor. So on my recent LinkedIn posts, I am working on a project with somebody, and it's called 25 Questions for 2025. And every time Paul Vincent posts or comes up with a question post, he asks me to do a visualization of it. Now, it's not really visual notes or a sketch note as such, but it starts with that same thinking, like what's an image that would conjure up the thoughts of that post. So it would be perhaps interesting for people to see how varied working visually and thinking visually can be, from the little scribbles and doodles and little icons and notes to the more finished visual metaphors. Have a little look, see what you think.
Yeah, and listeners, we'll make it really easy for you to take a look at that. That link will be over there in the show notes to both of those examples. Lastly, Nicki, as you're talking about this, I'm thinking about this in conjunction with the absolute explosion of adult coloring books in popularity. And I know visual note-taking and adult coloring books are 2 different things, but both I think, speak to this signal that immersing yourself in this physical, tangible state is a really great thing. So for somebody who's listening and they're thinking, actually, I could see this running in parallel with our wellness initiative. We'd love to upskill a few people at our organization. What's the best way for them to reach out to you, either for some coaching or demonstration? Or, hey, I could even imagine how cool it would be to have a resident visual notes artist, like for a longer extended period of time. How can they connect with you?
Yeah, just as you said earlier, you can reach me on LinkedIn, Nicki Hambleton, or you can search online for my website, which is nihconsultancy.com. And it would be lovely to hear from people and see how visual thinking and working more visually can help in lots of different ways.
Thank you, Nicki, so much for your time today. Always a pleasure to chat with you.
Same. Thanks, Tricia.
Hey there, dedicated listener. If you've made it this far, we know you're passionate about shifting the way education works, and Tricia and I appreciate you. If you loved what you heard today, we'd be so grateful if you could take a moment to rate and review Shifting Schools wherever you listen to podcasts. Those ratings help us reach even more educators just like you. And if you know someone who could benefit from these conversations, please share this episode with them. Just one person. Think of the impact we can make together. Don't forget to sign up for our newsletter for even more great content. And if you haven't already, join us at Camp Shifting Schools, where the conversations keep going long after the podcasts end. Thank you for being a part of this journey, and thank you for being part of Shifting Schools.